We are in a weird spot right now. There's so much news and media. I think what people think is happening, my friends and family are calling from all over the country, all over the world, like, what's going on? Are you okay? What's happening?
Welcome back to the CashFlow podcast, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. I'm your host, Jayson Yoss. Today, my special guest from LA, Rebecca Sekulich. Rebecca, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Jayson. So happy to be here.
You know what? We had talked about getting together a little while ago, and when you were going to come on last month, we got interrupted by the tragedy of the fires. And it's so dramatic and so devastating, but I'm here in San Diego. So I don't know the effects quite like you do. And then to top it off, you're a real estate agent and your clients are right there in the thick of it. So I kind of want to jump right in. Just tell me a little bit about how you got into real estate in LA market. And then I want to talk about everything that's going on in LA with the fires and the state of real estate right now.
Well, I have a long story, so I'm going to try to give you the Cliff Notes version of it because it could take a while to get there. So born and raised in Michigan, hometown, Dearborn, Michigan, hometown of Henry Ford. Went to Michigan State, studied cartography and geography, two things that people don't study. So I was a map designer, worked for the Department of Environmental Quality, Natural Resources. So I have this whole land and water management background, and I worked for the DNR DEQ for 6 years. So I have this really awesome, and that really ties into real estate in some weird way.
Sure.
But it's not what I'm doing now. So I had an opportunity. I went to Michigan State and I made a film when I was at Michigan State, and that film got picked up for distribution. And it was the first film shot on 35 millimeter on campus that was ever allowed to be built. And I was teaching film, French, geography, and English as a second language in my hometown and coaching varsity volleyball. Got the call that the film was picked up, and I literally was like, I'm leaving mid-year. It was March of 1999, and I got in my Volkswagen Beetle, brand new, 1998, with my mom, and we drove from Michigan to California. And within a few weeks of me being here, she left. I was like, what do I do? I was living in a guest house. And a friend of mine from Michigan was a Georgetown graduate. She's like, I have this friend of my dad's, and she runs a temp agency. And within 3 weeks of me getting here, I was offered a job at an educational production company making 3 times as much money as I was making teaching.
I love it.
And I was like, this is amazing. I'm rich. And then I'm like, oh, but we live in LA. And, it's like 4 or 5 times as expensive as things were in my hometown. So that quickly I was squashed. So I worked there for a while, and I went back into filmmaking, and I worked at several production companies, and I was helping some very famous people do some stuff, and I was working on a project, on that project for 2 years with somebody really famous, and I was the producer with the director. After 2 years working on a project, 2 years of no paycheck, that famous person up and left us. And it literally shattered me. And I didn't know what to do. I hadn't had a paycheck in 2 years, the thing I'd been working so hard for, I was going to make it, because this is a name that everybody knows. Can't tell you. But
What kind of passion project was it? Can you just tell me the type of project it was?
Yeah, so my first film, believe it or not, was about acquaintance rape. Not a topic we love to talk about, but it's existing. And we were literally, it was a conversation that was going on in college. This film was about inappropriate touch in teenagers. But what we were finding, I know it sounds weird, but what we're finding is it happened starting in elementary school. And we were trying to raise awareness. So this person, this celebrity on board, it had happened to them. So, it was one of those things where we were trying to make a movie to raise awareness about it. And it was really near and dear to our hearts. They left. And now what do I do? And I went to the director and I said, look, I need a job. And I'm a driver. So it's boom, I got to pivot to something. And she said, well, there's these folks and they're in real estate. You should go talk to them. They put out a little memo. This is before the internet, before smartphones.
Right.
They put out a memo on a job board that they need an assistant. I'm like, I am not being somebody's assistant. She's like, you know what? They're lovely people. Go talk to them. So I went and talked to them. They offered me a job and to start a newspaper, like Real Estate Today. The little kiosks in the corner, a free paper. Well, I'm a film producer. Like, I know how to manage money and how to make money. So I said to them, we're not going to get a great return on this. It's going to take years in order to get money. So I thank you so much for the opportunity, but you guys are great. Keep in touch. And I hugged them and I left. 3 days later, they called me and they said, Rebecca, we cannot stop thinking about you.
Awesome.
Like, your energy, what you brought to the table, you're so smart, and we just love you, and we want to pivot to something else. Would you be willing to come back and talk to us? So I went back there. They said, look, we brought the first franchise to a major real estate brokerage to California, and we're going to open up several offices. Would you be willing to help us? And instead of saying no, I instantly pivots my word now, like of the last 20 years. I pivoted to building an office is just like making a movie. It's the same thing with different characters and different cast members. So I got into that, and I ended up building 19 offices.
What a challenge.
From Newport Beach all the way up to almost Santa Barbara.
Yes.
And literally being the person that figured out something that nobody else could do. And what that was is they were hiring general contractors. They were doing the infrastructure to build the offices and doing like the cubicles and the phones and the front and having everything perfect. And I was looking at the budget going, you're paying them so much money, why? And I was able to figure out how we could segue out of that, and I could hire the people independently, still have the general run the project, but literally save them hundreds of thousands of dollars on each office. And I was able to figure that out like in my 20s. And it just worked. So one office turned to two, and then all of a sudden I have 7 paychecks coming, and I'm like, I'm rich again. But I'm not, because it was just really good money. And then the market crashed.
I was going to say, and just about then it was 2007 to 2009.
And they said, well, we're going to pivot again. We're going to open a real estate school, and we want you to run it. You were a teacher. And I'm like, I don't even have my license. And they kept telling me you should get your license, and I didn't want to get my license. I did not want to be a real estate agent. Real estate agents get a bad rap. Like
used car salesmen?
Yes. And especially in Michigan, because you have to sell like 400 houses to
make any money.
To like the 10 I have to sell here to make any money.
Fair
so
enough.
Didn't want to have anything to do with it. Tried to open up the school. I got my license, and the school really didn't work. It was that they were trying to recruit agents to help fill the agencies, and it wasn't right. So we closed the school. 2008 came. I was running an escrow company, and there were no more offices being built. And there was that magic moment for me, and I had to say to myself, what am I going to do here? Am I going to go back into film producing, or am I going to try this real estate thing? I had my license. And that moment, I remember, some people call it a come to Jesus moment, but it came to me and it was like, you know what, I'm going to try. I love to talk, which I love people. And it was actually one of my offices that I was building. And I shouldn't name it, but I'm going to. It was in a very fancy area called Ranchos Palos Verdes.
Okay.
And I was building that office. And when I was in there every day for 4 months. And I would listen to these mostly guys, call it out, because there was not a lot of women in real estate back then, pick up the phones, and they would talk to their clients so inappropriately.
Really?
It pissed me off. And I'm just going to say it. I was angered. This guy got off the phone, and I said to him, who are you talking to? And he goes, one of my clients, $10 million listing. And I said, you really spoke to that person like that? And he's like, yeah, they can't understand what we need them to do.
Right.
And the light bulb went off saying, you shouldn't treat people like that. You're there to help them. You're making all this money on this transaction. It really angered me. And so I made that decision instantly. I'm going to go into real estate, and I'm going to be a better agent than these guys have been working with for the past, 10 years.
Isn't that amazing that an agent who has a $10 million listing would be so inappropriate? You would never talk to anybody in a normal business format in that manner, especially a client. That's going to pay at least $300,000 in commission, most likely. And instead, you're going to think, that client is bad. That's terrible.
And the worst part is, it didn't just happen once. It wasn't a one-off. Like, this guy wasn't just a jerk.
Right.
It kept happening over and over. And then I started, in NLP, they say your reticular activating system, your RAS, when you think about something, you have to think about that over and over again. Once I heard this guy say this, I started paying attention to what agents were saying, and it was happening all over the board.
Right.
And I didn't like it at all. And I'm like, does it have to be this way? Is everybody like this? Well, of course they're not. So I made that decision, took the leap of faith. I took a class that they were offering, that my brokerage paid $800 for this class, and the magic happened again. It came right, I threw the boomerang back, and it reverberated, came back to me. And within 3 weeks of them doing what I was told, I got my first $1 million listing in Beverly Hills.
Nice.
And that magic moment, it was a special deal because the house was being foreclosed upon. It ended up turning out to be a short sale. I negotiated the short sale. I had a lawyer partner. I had just taken a short sale class. Nobody even knew what a short sale
Right,
was
at that time, yep.
back in 2010. They were just starting. It was like a new buzzword. And somebody sent me an email like, take this class. So I took this class. I learned all about it. And I ended up taking the listing. Contract to close was 28 days.
Wow.
And the bank gave me a bonus
For the time frame.
for the time frame.
Right.
And I made more money in one single transaction than I had in an entire year. And I was like, wow,
I'm rich.
This is amazing. No, it wasn't like I'm rich, but it took the edge off that I could be okay for the next 6 months and not have to worry about eating ramen noodles or where it was going to go. And, you know, we weren't making the money like we're making now. And so it was that was the start. And I got the taste in my mouth and I'm like, you know what? Not only was that easy, it was fun.
Right.
And I helped this guy get out of a horrible situation. And believe it or not, he had another agent list the property before. And when I talked to him, I said, he told me the house was listed. I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't talk to you.
Yeah, right.
It's out of integrity.
Absolutely.
When does your listing expire? And he's like, what time is it? And this is Friday, 5 o'clock. He's like, 5 o'clock? I go, when? He said, today. I said, okay, we can talk. Am I coming to you? You're coming to me. Took the listing and just got it done. And my drive took over. I didn't know what I was doing. I pulled in another agent who actually became a very good friend of mine, who was an older mentor. And we basically, you know, she walked me through the whole entire process. And I'm like, I can totally do this. I wish I would have known it was this simple. Now, we all know it's not that simple, but I figured it out. And so that was the start of it. I started in 2010. In 2013, I incorporated and started my own business. And there were no more offices being built, and I pivoted right into mostly residential sales. And I also knew a lot about commercial, but my niche really is residential sales.
I love it. And just if we took a lens and magnified what was going on back then, the 2007 to 2010 timeframe, and do we see that coming back here in California whatsoever? I know that's a crystal ball question, but are we going to go through that again where we're all running to take short sale and foreclosure classes so we can learn how to do BPOs and learn how to handle that? Is that going to happen again?
I don't think it can happen again. Everybody talks about it. They said it was going to happen a couple years later, and they said it was going to happen during the pandemic, and it never happened. Real estate, literally, the trend has just literally was down here, and now we're over here. So the trajectory is just crazy. We've had little plateaus,
of course,
but we're always going up. The person who bought the property, you know, in 2007, 8, 9, 10, all those people they're all millionaires now.
Yeah.
People who bought property after a problem, people who bought property during the pandemic when the interest rates were so low, they borrowed and used other people's money.
Right.
I have a 1.99 on 2 of my 5 houses.
I love every time I hear that somebody has a mortgage rate below like 4, I'm just like amazed that I could barely remember we were that low during a huge crisis. Oh, by the way, you can get a
and that
3%
wasn't even
mortgage
offered though. So we were in the 3s and the high 2s.
Did you buy down?
I did. So my lender, awesome lender, was like, hey, you should do this. I have never seen this historic low.
Yeah.
I mean, and when you're buying down at that low, it was only costing me between $4,000 and $10,000 to buy down the rate to get to that 1.99.
Right. With LA being traditionally one of the most expensive markets out there, what are you telling your clients, especially your investor clients? Like, what are you telling them when they want to get in the market and, rates aren't at 3% anymore?
Well, the good news is that when something goes wrong, like the pandemic went wrong, we all pivoted. The rates dropped and the economy was booming. The pandemic was great. We had the best, honestly, 3 years of my life.
And that turned out pretty good in the real estate world.
I know. Yes. Unfortunately, a lot of people had to die and suffer because of it. and I don't.
There was a side effect. Yes.
There was. I lost my own dad, during the pandemic because of COVID, and it wasn't great. But the economy, they had to do something. So every time there's something that happens, we pivot. Again, the word of the century here.
That's our word of today.
We pivot to fix things. And so we started doing things and offering things that people weren't privy to. Right. Like we're doing buy downs a lot. People are like, what's a buy down? I
Right.
talk about buy downs all the time, where the interest rate starts out at 6%. And, for the first year, it's at 3.5%. The second year, it's at 4%. The third year, it's at 5%. And then by that time, there's plenty of time we could refi and get out of it, and hopefully it'll be lower. So we're doing workout deals and programs that didn't exist. I think the average person in the world thinks there's 100,000 different types, of lenders. What they don't realize is that there's thousands of products.
Yep.
And it's not
It's
just
true.
like going to Dunkin' Donuts and picking a donut, like you only get a dunker today. It's like literally there's special things. And every single client, I sit down with them, I assess their situation, and we talk a lot about money. Where's your money coming from?
Right.
What's your down payment look like? Do you have any access to cash? Another thing, there's so much cash in this world. My last 6 closings were cash. There was no loan.
And do they utilize that cash to purchase and then refinance out, or are they buying cash because there's a better return overall?
Both.
Both.
It depends. I find my clients that are super wealthy, they've got millions of dollars in their checking account. When I ask for proof of funds, they don't have to pull it from a 401k or an annuity or something. It's like, this is what's in my checking account. It's people who have a lot of money know that investing in real estate is how they're going to make more money.
And where are they focused on in your market up in LA? When an investor comes to you, what are you primarily working with, and what are they focused on?
So lately, it's been, honestly, people are still asking me, is it still a good time to flip?
Got it.
I mean, they want to get in and out. So everybody wants a return quickly. And there are still a lot of possibilities.
Sure.
I did several flips last year. I usually do 2 or 3 myself a year over the past 10 years. There's money, but you got to find the deal.
Right.
And that's the hard part. We all have access to the same amount of information. So if I can give my clients information that they don't have, like access to our private MLS that we have our own intra-company MLS at Compass, where we do private exclusives, and they have things that are on the market that people don't know about. So if I give them the address of 123 Banana Street, and they look it up, and they're like, I can't find that property anywhere. That's right. You got to call me to get that information.
That's 100% correct. There are deals out there, and if you are working with an experienced professional, that whole thing they bring to the table, not just is be able to manage that transaction, but to find a deal. If you find a deal, you're king or queen. I mean, that's the bottom line.
You are. And then being able to present that. Investors, if I looked at my phone right now, Jayson, I'm not joking. There's probably 50 messages that I could pull up in less than 5 seconds of investors reaching out to me. They see my listings, they see what I bought it for, what we did to it, what I sold it for, and they want to work with me. And there's not enough deals to go around. So when something good comes around, I usually work with the same small group of people because I'm confident that if I call them up and I have a deal for you, we have to move today.
Yeah, they
I
want
can't, not tomorrow,
Right.
not the next day, and I need the money now, and I need people who are liquid. Because a lot of the deals are not lendable without cash. So I'm not working with some investors who are buying hundreds of properties, a year or even a month. I'm working with people like you, people like me, who are like, okay, I've worked my whole life. I have $1 million, and then I can do a DSCR loan, and we can we can pull some construction money out, and we can flip it. And they're looking for me to analyze it. And one of my little superpowers is I can analyze a deal really quickly and know it's a good deal. And when I tell them it's a good deal, they don't have to second guess, because I've done it so many times where it's almost second nature. It just happens.
Is it something that you find where when you're doing these flip type deals, there comes a crossroads where you're like, hey, maybe we should hold on to this, and you refinance out of it? Is it your experience to be able to get into a product and shift, or is it always like, hey, if we're going to flip, and that's the way it's going to go? Market be damned.
I don't think it's the market be damned, but when we're going for a flip, it's a flip.
Okay.
And I know how long it's going to take, when we can get out of it, and what the return's going to be. I mean, I was averaging 31% return on my flips. Unheard of. Do you know what the national average is?
What is the national average?
It's 11%.
On flips?
On
Which
flips.
11% is a great number. I mean,
It's
if
a
you're
great
getting
number.
if you're getting 10% on your money, you're getting 1% in the bank. So come on.
But do you know why people are only getting 11%?
Why is that?
Because investors who are buying, 15, 20, 30, 100 properties a month, they've got the same equation.
You're right.
They do the same build. They hire the same contractors, and it becomes expensive.
Yeah.
Another superpower I have many, is I have the people to do all the work. So if I help a client or myself buy the house, I have my own team of people.
Yep.
And we know how to do things. I know I don't have to go get a bid. You don't have to say, how much is going to cost to redo my kitchen? I know exactly how much it's going to cost. From the amount the quartz is, the sink, the fixtures, the cabinets, I can pretty much tell you without having to actually make the phone calls because I've done it so many times. So when they say to me, how much is it going to cost to flip this house? And I'm like, it's going to cost $225.
Right.
And they're like, whoa. I just did one, less square footage, and it was $450.
Right.
Well, that's because you used X, Y, and Z. The contractor marked it up 47%. They're taking the profit, and you're not getting as much.
Right.
So if we use my team of people, I go in as owner builder, whether I own the property or not, or I'm representing you or somebody else. I get all the permits. And for that, I get the house that I need to sell for top dollar. And then I make it look magical for pennies on the dollar.
Sharpened pencil always makes more money. And I get the idea that, look, if you buy a bad deal, it doesn't matter how sharp your pencil is, it is what it is. But you hit the nail right on the head. If you know exactly what something costs, if you know exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and how long it takes, then the difference between a 10% overrun and a 1% overrun or 1% under, there's a difference between just 11 and 21% right there. So it shows your approach is why your clients are making more money. With the way things have gone over the last month, what are we going to do right now? What are we doing in LA right now that our world is turned upside down?
We're still, I feel like, in the discovery phase. We were in crisis for the first couple of weeks, and it's been awful. I mean, it's only been 5 weeks, and sometimes I feel like it's been 5 years because it's been so much info, and sometimes it feels like it happened yesterday.
True.
We are in a weird spot right now. There's so much news and media. I think what people think is happening, my friends and family are calling from all over the country, all over the world, like, what's going on? Are you okay? What's happening? I don't think people realize what really happened and how awful and literally traumatic it has been for so many people. Like, it's awful when somebody loses their house, or it's awful when your home floods or you have a fire. But most of the time, things don't burn to the ground, and it's not every house. Like, there was a house spared here and there, but pretty much the whole city got wiped, times 2 in 2 different areas. And we have the exact polar opposite demographic. We've got the Palisades, which is a wealthy, beautiful area looking at the beach. And then we have this nature where everyone wanted to be close to the mountains and in parks. And, it's exactly the opposite. We have a different demographic of people that live in Altadena, and those people were not as insured. They couldn't get insurance. Their insurance was being dropped. So we have about, I think the stats say that somewhere between 70 and 80% of people in the Altadena area were covered on the California Fair Plan, or did not have the proper insurance, or were dropped from the insurance, or their insurance went up like 4 or 5 times. So an example, like my homeowner's insurance on my primary residence is about $1,100 a year.
Right.
And I pay $3,000 on each house for earthquake insurance. Do I want to pay $4,000 a year on each house? No. But imagine if you're in Altadena and you have $1 million house that was your great-grandfather's, and he paid $100,000 for it 30 years ago, and now you own this $1 million property, and they're telling you your regular insurance is $3,000, your earthquake insurance is $4,000, and then if you want fire insurance, it's another $4,000. Right. So you have somebody who owns a property or has a very baby mortgage where they're basically paying $1,000 a month on insurance, and they all said they can't afford it, so they didn't get it. Exactly opposite in the Palisade. We have probably about 10 or 11% of people are on the California Fair Plan or don't have insurance, and the other 80+% did have insurance. Problem is they did not have the appropriate coverage. Are they going to be given the same amount of money to rebuild their home, which they paid, let's say, $2 million for 20 years ago, but now it's worth $6 million? And we could build a house. I could build a house for $250 a square foot. How much is going to be to rebuild a house? It's not going to burn down again. We're looking like $450, $500 a square foot to get that house. And are we going to be given 4,000 square feet? We're going to be given a $2 million check to rebuild a house? And can we build it with the proper materials like steel or whatever needs to be built? Built-in sprinklers. So this doesn't happen again.
There's a huge amount of structures lost. I think I was looking at a stat of something like over 15,000 structures lost in the LA area during the fires, compared to the last major fire had like 1,100 structures lost or 1,500 structures lost. So, 100 times more. And I know that's going to put pressure on the insurance system. I wanted to get your take real quick. I mean, the Department of Real Estate has been coming out and emailing us all. Hey, they're really cracking down on, what's the best way to describe it? Unscrupulous practices, But
price gouging.
I don't want to fault the Department of Real Estate for trying to look out for people. But how then are we going to be able to get a deal as real estate agents who want to help people to actually buy, or maybe they got a check from the insurance company and they're not moving to Orange County, so they want to buy something still in LA? How are we helping them in that scenario when we have to be very careful for what we're offering for properties?
We walk a fine line.
We do.
And, for the past 5 weeks, all the people that lost their homes in either places, they have to live somewhere.
Right.
So the problem is they can't live where they were, and they still have mortgages due, and they still, everyone is literally freaking out because they don't know what they're going to do. The word forbearance is coming up a lot. This is not forbearance times. We're not in a home and we lost our job and we can't make the payment. So a forbearance is not what we want to do here. We want to defer it. But those conversations, we are just starting to have them. Everybody got their 3 months. They were all given January, February, March, and they said, okay, your next payment's going to be due in April. But what's going to happen in April? You have no home to go to. And all those people that lost their home, they've got to pay to live somewhere else. Or I have people in the Palisades and in Altadena that are living with family members.
It's crazy. Do you think that, and again, a lot of them can't go far. They're not all working remotely, so they can't go far.
No.
And so I know that affects them on the management side. I know that affects them on rent. We do have a lot of people relocating down to San Diego, but they're not getting gouged. But I appreciate the state wanting to do something for our constituents, but there is a fine line that we have to walk. What do you foresee your approach is going to be? And I know we only have a couple minutes left on how we're going to help our clients rebuild in the coming 2, 3, 6 months, year.
So right now we're in cleanup mode. So, I want to say this because I want to say this. I have not talked about the fires whatsoever. I do a lot of videos and stuff, and it's near and dear to my heart, and I really haven't come out and said anything. But I actually had the last closing in the Palisades, and it wasn't just anybody. It was my best friend.
Right.
We'd been looking for a year. She was in escrow at a different place down the street and ended up buying in a mobile home park where actually Barbara Corcoran lives, Tahitian Terrace. Everybody knows what it is. There's only 2 of them overlooking the ocean. It's like a slice of heaven. We were in escrow at another property. It wasn't really safe because of the mudslides the year before. We got out of that, found the perfect house.
Right.
We closed on Monday. The tent went up for termites on Monday afternoon. She was over there on Tuesday sending me pictures, and there's a big puff of smoke in the back. And she said, it's getting weird over here. I said, get out of there. Get out of there. There's only one way in, one way out.
Right.
And within 6 hours, the house was gone. And the whole entire mobile home park times 2, everything was just plowed.
That's brutal.
And I was never even able to give her the keys.
Ugh,
so we have a lot of problems happening right now. And one of them is how are we going to get back? When is it safe?
Right.
That happened 5 weeks ago. She was just able to get in with her residency pass and her driver's license last week. 4 weeks to see what was left of what she purchased.
Right.
Never even made a mortgage payment, but one is due coming up. So I'm trying to solve those problems. So truth be told, she's living with me right now.
Right.
Because what are we going to do? Where's that money going to come from? Right. Did the California Fair Plan cover that? No, it's not going to cover all that to rebuild. And you can't just put a regular structure in a mobile home park.
Right.
You have to put a mobile home back there. So all of these things. So the name of the game right now is, how is FEMA going to get involved? What is our government going to do? Right. Is our governor going to step in? Is the mayor going to step up to the plate? Who is going to help clean this mess up safely? And we don't want anybody to get hurt. These chemicals, it's not just like a tree burned down and it's ashes. It is asbestos. It is lead. It is arsenic. Things that can't get anywhere near us on our skin. It is in our water. The water pipes, everything underground is destroyed. We have to rebuild an infrastructure. Where are the power lines going to go? Everybody's like, well, they were, over our homes before. Now we want them buried. So we have very basic problems that have to be solved first. Clean up, and then we have to start rebuilding. And we cannot rebuild the same way because another fire will happen, a monsoon will happen, a flood will happen. We have to build smarter, and we have to literally come from a place of how can we prevent this horrible tragedy from happening again, because I believe in my heart that it could have been prevented.
We're going to have you come back and talk about this some more, because there's just way more to dive into, and somebody who's right there on the ground who knows about it. Rebecca, I appreciate you sitting down with us. We have more to go. For everybody tuning in, stay tuned to the next time on CashFlow Podcast, where Rebecca and I go deeper into this situation. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me, Jayson.